You know, it's not easy to live under the occupation, to suffer every day in pain with your family. You see your children every day suffering because of this occupation. When you see your child shot in front of you and the world is silent. I think the only way that's to have the solution and to end the occupation is to put more pressure from outside, from inside in Palestine, and outside from the people, as the same was happened in South Africa. That came from outside the BDS movement and all these that succeed. So we need this third intifada, third global intifada that's bring all the people from outside, from inside, in universities, everywhere, make you as activists. When you are suffering and in pain under the occupation, day after day, and they continue to use the violence against you, against the family, against the land also as a farmers, when they destroyed the land of the people, when they cut the olive trees. So you have to resist, there is no other choice.
Actually, but in 2040, they project that the United States will be a minority-majority country.
Right.
And that would be the Hispanics, African Americans, Muslims, Asians, whatever. And that is what drives the fear of the racist. And right now they say kindergarten children in America, children of color, are already a majority, if that's correct. I've heard people say that. So this is the fear of racist America, and it's not all of America, but that's probably what's driving it. In Israel, between the river and the sea, Palestinians are probably already the majority, including Gaza, East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and those Palestinians that live within Israel. And so that they probably outnumber, and if they had democracy and voted, that would be the end of a Jewish state. But it might be the beginning of a better world and a better life for everybody within that place. So I think the racism of Israel is fearing a majority of people of color in Israel, and that the people in America are being pushed by the racism of those that fear when America becomes majority minority in 2040, if those numbers are correct.
Is that the settlers are extremely heavily armed, even the children. So children are allowed, the settler children are even allowed to walk around with weapons and harass, like guns, knives, whatever they want. Uzis. I mean, they can walk around heavily armed in neighborhoods, and nothing is allowed to be said. They can harass Palestinians of all ages, and nothing can be done. So it's not to say that where they're always saying that Palestinians are teaching their children to hate Israelis. It's quite the opposite. There was a documentary that actually showed where they were showing the children, like the Israeli settler children, how to use the weapons and telling them, how to kill kill Palestinians. It was disturbing. It was very disturbing to watch.
No, they were signing on the rockets before
on the rockets
they
too. That was even more disturbing. But but this is one that was actually separate, where they were showing them and telling them. The kid was like, "Oh, I had a bad dream with Palestinians. I'm going to kill all the Palestinians." And like he said, they were having the kids sign their names or say kill on the bombs before they went to go bomb the children. So it's really the opposite. The kids are always harassing Palestinian, the settler children. The settlers, like he said, they're more dangerous. It's basically they've been given open access to do whatever they want. It's similar to America in the South during slavery, where they had open rights to do whatever they want to black men or basically black men. I mean, it was mostly the black African American men and women. They felt like they can treat them any way they wanted to. And that's just how it is with Palestinians. Is the settlers just have open access. They can walk into a Palestinian house while they're eating dinner and just do whatever. They kill them.
Americans here in America of Palestinian descent, and in particular Muslims as well, we feel that this election is extremely biased because we have two total candidates who are going against everything that we're for, especially concerning Palestine. But this is not a new phenomenon. This is something that's been going on for at least the last 40, 50 years in presidential elections. And actually since the existence of the illegal Israeli entity, where Harry Truman recognized the state of Israel. So he was the first president. So we've been having those problems since then. It has never changed. Trump is very extreme towards Muslims, obviously. He wants to ban Muslims from coming in this country. That's the least that we know of, that he openly says. He wants to build a wall for Mexico on their own dime. And he has said very degrading remarks against women in general, against people with disabilities. So he's against everybody, okay, so, to be fair. It's not just against Muslims, but Muslims in particular, because that's what sells. Racism in America sells. America was built on racism. So this is something that's been ongoing. For Palestinians, it's catastrophic because Hillary Clinton has sold her soul to AIPAC. She was their main featured guest speaker. In Israeli Political Action Committee, based in Washington, D.C. They are the core people that fund the Israeli occupation. They are the core people that basically make up our foreign policy here in the United States. And they should always be a primary target of activism, because that's the organization that's basically destroying the United States with their foreign policies. They want to go to war with Iran. They want to go to war with everybody that threatens the existence of Israel. Actually, this has been a phenomenon as far as what you're saying about the land. How does it play a role with U.S. imperialism, let's say? Okay, the question should be, what does the United States get out of it? Because they're the primary funders of the illegal occupation. It absolutely plays nothing towards the United States. The United States gets nothing out of the occupation of Palestine. And this has been the phenomenon. So in 1948, the Balfour Declaration, before that, and so on and so forth, has made this vision that they want to give this land to the Jews. They want to make it a Jewish homeland. Okay? So that is what is called Zionism, which is a racist supremacist ideology, okay, that wants to sit itself on top of another people's land and take it. That's exactly what it is, nothing more, nothing less. Of course, it plays into U.S. imperialism as far as broadening their territory, as far as taking over more lands and having airspace and allies. Maybe that's the only thing I can think of as benefiting the United States, is that they have an ally in the Middle East who they want to bomb, who they want to send planes. Maybe in that factor it does benefit them. But as far as, like, I'm saying, what does America benefit? I mean, in a good way is what I'm trying to say, is there isn't any benefit. And that has been, if you look at Alison Weir's book, she explains that really, really good, okay? It talks about that in particular, like what does the United States get out of it. So other than more land domination, spreading their wings across the world like they have been doing, it really does not benefit them.
Most of the companies and most of the things in charge of in the United States, the banks, the security, the defenses, even people who are high up in the government, they are in some way, shape, or form attached to Israel. So it's their benefits. It benefits them for Israel to be successful regardless. They are having the settlements inside of Palestinian territory, which makes it hard. How are you going to take them out? There's no way to take them out and retract them out of Palestinian territory, so it's hard to have two separate states because they've infiltrated, even though Israel and Palestine, Israel, and then there's a Palestinian territory, supposed to be separate entities. They still are invading and infiltrating Palestinian territories and building Palestinian, Israeli settlements in Palestinian territories.
Like an activist is most of my life, as I am 43 years old, all my life under the occupation. I started my resistance. I grew with the violence of the Israeli army because my village also under the occupation since 1967. I grew with this all violent. I joined the first Intifada. When it started, I was a child, 14 years old. And from that time in jail, in I've been in jail many times. I've been activist against the occupation in many ways. Look, to live under the occupation as a child, it's really very hard. To be in jail as a child is very difficult and hard life in Israel's jails, how they treated the Palestinians, especially the children in jails. It's very bad.
And when you hear settlements, you don't really get the full picture of what these complexes are. They're actually armed castle fortresses they have machine gun turrets. They have roads to them that cut through Palestinian land that separate people from their crops. The people, they close the road crossings for hours a day. The people cannot cross these roads on the way to the settlements because they are supposedly securing the freedom of the Israeli people in the settlements to get there. And if you could speak to what that's actually like, because I've seen the maps. And I mean, the West Bank and Gaza are supposed to be for Palestinians, but when you crisscross them with roads that no one can cross, that have barricades and fences, similar to the ones we saw here in Cleveland a couple weeks ago, that people are not allowed to cross but an hour or two a day. They cannot water their crops, they cannot visit their families. What is the point, and why is it we allow this to happen? And I know there are Cleveland companies, there's a Cleveland developer, there are many people from this area that are building these settlements, and I don't understand why we allow it to continue without far more vocal occupation of their front doors, because they live here and we know who they are, and they are preventing the free movement in the tiny open air prisons that are allowed the Palestinian people by nature of shutting down the access.
250 settlements inside of West Bank, and we have 400 checkpoints to protect them.
Right.
Many roads, that special roads that comes for the settlements, and they confiscated the land of the people, the farmers, to make these roads between the settlements and the cities, between the settlements itself. 600,000 settlers in West Bank, and they are most danger than the army. If you talk about the settlers in West Bank, as we heard last year when they burned the family of the Wabsha family in Douma village, it was made by settlers. They burned a child 18 months with his father and mother when they was sleeping. And this is what the Nazis did against the Jews. So it's the same what the Nazis did in that time, the Zionists doing against the Palestinian in this time.
Mind you, BDS is non-violent. BDS, Palestinians always get criticized, if they're resisting by armed resistance, or like Hamas or the PFLP or one of the resistance movements in Palestine. They get criticized for that. Now, if you work in non-violent means, like our friend here, Iyad Burnat, who's very popular in Palestine for doing, which is fighting against the walls that are being built in his village, Berlin. Okay, so, and then also if you participate in BDS, which is the simplest forms of resisting the illegal occupation of Israel, okay, by educating people, by targeting companies that basically fund the Israeli occupation of Palestine, now are being criminalized. So if you don't want the Palestinians to resist, by any means necessary, which is the armed resistance, and you don't want Palestinians to resist peacefully, then what do you want? That's what the Palestinians are asking the world. So if you're criminalizing these effects, that is a shame. And that's something that we all have to, here in America, stand up against. Stand up against our politicians who are bought out by Zionism, who are puppets for the Israeli occupation of Palestine. This is what America here should do. Like Iyad was saying before, stop the funding of the occupation. Stop the funding of the killing of their people. People have died in his village protecting Berlin. Okay? And we need to, this is our job. People like Iyad are our connection, that we must fight against. They tell us what they want. They lead the Palestinian struggle, and we here living like myself in the diaspora that want to return back home to Palestine, these are champions in Palestine that are fighting not only for them, they're fighting for us, for our rights. So we need to stand up here in America, and the least we can do is fight this oppression, fight this insanity that wants to criminalize peaceful means to end the occupation.
A few months ago, they get 6 million tear gas from the United States, from that company, yes, CTS, CTS in Pennsylvania.
Every time it comes up in the UN to charge Israel with something, the United States vetoes. In the UN, the United States is constantly vetoing any issue that comes when it's going to be against Israel. It's a constant veto by the United States. Israel has been charged with war crimes, multiple war crimes. Their prime ministers have been charged with as war criminals. So the leaders of, so that when they talk about other governments having war criminals as their leaders are multi-war criminals. You had Sharon, who was in charge of, when it happened, the two camps in the 70s, Shatila and Sabrin. What are the two camps? Sabra and Shatila. Yeah, where there was complete. They killed everybody. And who was in control? Who was responsible for that? Sharon. And that's Iyad, who has been charged with multiple war crimes. You have their prime ministers are constantly coming out and saying all the Muslims, all the Palestinians, not even Muslims, all Palestinians, which includes the Christian ones too, need to be murdered, need to be killed. The land needs to be cleansed of Palestinians. So they're talking about Muslims and Christians, and even the Jewish ones that support Palestinians, because they go to jail too. Whether it was international Palestinian media where they were staying in the hotels, those hotels were actually being bombed.
Yeah.
So they're constantly attacked. So, and plus you have to remember who's controlling the satellites, who's controlling what's coming in and what's going out. And also even when it comes to social media, a lot of Palestinians who are living abroad, if they are activists and Palestinian activists, when they try to go back to Palestine to visit, they are not allowed entrance into Palestine. Sometimes they're forced to sign a paper they are told to sign a paper. Most of them do not sign it. When they try to enter Palestine by the Israeli soldiers, that they are committing acts against Israeli safety, and that's just by being an activist.
We use, we use the nonviolent way in our struggle from the beginning, and if we look to the first Intifada, it was a popular Intifada in a nonviolent way, hunger strike, demonstration, boycott, videos. Same as now that we use, especially in Balayin village, we use since 12 years the nonviolent resistance by demonstrations every week, by creative ideas, and also we have international Israelis activists that join us every week in these demonstrations. Sometimes you feel that you have succeed in the ground and succeed outside. That's give you more hope to continue this.
And there's another thing where they're doing something called mapping, where almost off topic from your question to begin with, but where they are going into homes of Palestinians at night, and they will take pictures of everyone in the home and map where they're sleeping, so that they know where they are and where they're sleeping. And Israel is one of the only supposed democratic governments that are actively arresting young children, especially male Palestinian boys. So you have male Palestinian, children, Palestinians, both female and male, who are in prisons with adults for something as little as being accused of throwing a rock at a truck, at a bulldozer. Or if an Israeli accuses a Palestinian child of spitting in their facility, in their area, then they will be arrested. So there's acts of, it's been inhumane for years, it's just never been documented, or nobody's really cared. Just by saying your country, like me saying my country, they can stamp my passport and deport me and say I can't come back to Palestine. So, and then there was one activist who actually, they played a recording of her speaking here in the United States in a private meeting. And so she was listening, they had her listen to herself speaking with other people about the, anti-Israeli government events or pro-Palestinian events. They're playing it for her. So, and that happened in the United States, and she's now trying to go to visit Palestine, and they played it for her. So I mean, Palestinian activists are even, they're at risk that if you're going to be an activist, you have to know that you might have a chance of not being able to enter your country.
Look, people didn't understand, especially outside of Palestine, Europe, United States, they didn't understand because of the media. They didn't give him the truth. They didn't show the life of the Palestinians under the occupation. They didn't say that, they're saying always that it's a war, and it's not a war. They're saying it's a religious conflict, and it's not a religious conflict, it's a colonization.
Palestinian media locally is great. The thing is their outreach is limited. So they're within Ramallah, for example, okay? A lot of times they shut down their offices.
Who is that?
Yeah, the Israelis actually go in there and make incursions and go into Ramallah and shut down their offices for speaking. So yeah, there is a powerful media base. The thing is, once they start hitting on some points in reference to the prisoners, for example, Palestinian political prisoners, you have a Damir, okay, which is one of the awesome media outlets that are on Facebook as well, and that are, you know, all across the social media spectrum. They shut them down. They've actually went there, arrested people in the offices. So yeah, there is great media, you know, in occupied Palestine. The thing is, they also suffer. They also suffer by being bombarded, by being bombed, by being shot at, and including the Palestinian journalists. Yeah, so they get shot at too. So they have one of the most dangerous jobs on earth. You know? Yeah. United States, they're starting to, in attempts to criminalize BDS, the BDS movement, okay, which one of them started it off with Governor Cuomo in New York. He actually did an executive order where anyone who boycotts the illegal entity of Israel will be blacklisted. New York will actually go after those companies that boycott Israel. So this is how severe the situation has gotten. Now,
as far as when it was why originally they were allowed in, it was an answer to how to solve the problem after the World War I and II. You know, what do we do with the Jewish people who were being, you know, murdered by Hitler? Where should we send them? How do we make up? Send them to Palestine, because it wasn't declared a state yet. So they sent them to Palestine, the Holy Land, and then they just took the Zionists took over from there. They even, and what people don't realize is that true Jewish people do not like the European Jews, or Zionists as they call them too. They don't like them. They don't approve of there being a state of Israel. There's been Jewish people who have been killed as well. So there's a group here that's active in the United States of Orthodox Jews who are actively boycotting the state of Israel. They say it's against their religion for there to be a state of Israel. So the pretense that they claimed the state of Israel was for religious purposes, but that was just a front and a cover, because that's not really what it's for. It's really just to have control of the land. And we give the United States gives over $3 billion in aid a year to Israel. There's been multiple cases of espionage where Israelis or people from the Mossad have been caught stealing U.S. information, security information, and no one's been charged with treason. When the 9/11 happened, they caught 3 people from Israel who recorded the whole entire event. Like, they were there, just standing there, recording the whole entire event before it even started, and nothing across the bridge, and nothing happened. Is failing. I mean, there's so many students who don't know how to read. In America, people who are 18 years old, 19 years old, went through school but don't know how to read and write. So, I mean, if you go to Israel, if you are an Israeli, you get free education, you get monthly stipend, which is basically they get cash and money. They're living better than anyone here in the United States is living, and we're asking ourselves, where's our money going? It's going to Israel. But then we have to again remember Israel and America. I mean, it's basically like they're the same. One is the left hand, one is the right hand. I mean, they're the same people who are running the government in the United States. They have, people in Israel. That's why it's like that. Like the banks, when we had the housing crisis in the United States, the main banks that were in charge of it all were owned by Zionists. did they ever go to court for that? No. I mean, we had a huge housing crisis in the United States, and they just took all the money and left. That's it. There were masjids in the World Trade Center, and some people are like, well, they were Muslim fanatics. If you're a Muslim fanatic, you're not going to be at a bar the night before you're going to claim some holy act. And they were saying that these people were at a bar the night before drinking. It makes you have to realize there's it's not a conspiracy theory, but you have to open your eyes enough to understand there's more to the story. Just like when the Palestinian activist was murdered in the UAE in his hotel room, and they actually broke it down to how he was murdered. They made it look like he was injected with something to make it look like he had a heart attack. So they broke it down, and they went in and they showed the camera footage and showed that they were using false IDs of other Israelis. So I mean, it's the Mossad. If you ever, I mean, we support. Like that's our government. We're supporting terrorism. And if you look at what happened in Ferguson, the same company that was using the bombs on the Ferguson people is the same company that was using the bombs in Gaza and against Palestinians. And then why are American police officers being trained by Israelis? That's another thing, because it's all one and the same. People don't realize that.
We are not against the Jewish people, we are against the occupation. And we try our best to send this message to many people outside in the world to understand by our social media, by our touring, by our like speaking tour, by our videos, movies, books, to educate more people to understand about the story in Palestine. And it's important, especially in the United States, for the people to understand the story, because the media here is lying.
Can't go and charge them in international court, criminal court. There are other lawsuits that have been put out against Israel for attacks on people, and sometimes on land issues they win in court very once in a while. But even the U.S. woman that was killed by the bulldozer, Rachel Corrie, her parents tried to sue for that, and they did not receive justice on that case. And she was purposely run over. She was wearing an orange suit. She was seen by the bulldozer man, and not only did the driver, not only did he run over her once, backed up and ran over again. Corey, in 2000 and
that's the one that the Israelis make fun of, and they call her Pancake. You know,
that was done,
absolutely, because she was bulldozed. She was killed by a bulldozer.
that was in Gaza.
Rafah.
No.
But she was one of the stories that were highlighted and were kind of brought about, with her family's help to bring about to the world. So she's received her case received international attention, which is good. But the Israelis have went to the extent to make fun of her. They call her pancakes. They actually, if you went on Twitter or if you went all over social media, they were actually trending something in regards to Rachel Corrie being a pancake. That's how racist, that's how evil, and that's how vile these people are. They're really, human rights activists, and they fight for Palestinian rights. It is by and far very small. It's not enough. It should be a lot more. Of course, we commend those that are. Nobody's against that. Any help that the plight of the Palestinian people can get is much appreciated. But it's still very small, in comparison to what it should be.
Which, for me, Gaza is like real life practice for the Israeli government, because all they do is attack them air, ground, naval, and everything. They have nothing to fight back with. But when the Israelis were actually getting on the lawn chairs and sitting on the hills across, watching every time they bombed Gaza and cheering it on, so much so that there was a reporter, I forgot for which station she was working for in the U.S., they actually threatened her life and told her that if she messed up or said anything, that they know that she's going to be taken care of. So that's just what type of people that you're dealing with. And not to say that all people who live in Israel are like that, but basically the majority. I mean, they can just walk into a Palestinian home and take it. I mean, who does that? It's like, and they refer to it as squatters' rights. Squatters' right. It can't be squatters' rights if it's owned by a family for generations, and then you claim it. Just as they go and they purposely sabotage Palestinian crops. You know, the olive trees and the grapes and the vineyards, they purposely will go and burn them or sabotage them or poison the water and poison the wells. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. They found that they were putting cyanide in orange juice that was being sold to Palestinians.
Or feel this lots of hate that comes from these soldiers when they arrested me the last time. They're sending six special forces, and as a soldiers, special forces, they attacked me in the demonstration. They was beating me on my body. They broke in 2 ribs in my chest.
But that's not the only Palestinians. 2 other short points. Nobody thinks about the 300 nuclear weapons that Jimmy Carter said that the Israelis have. So the Israelis have a nuclear umbrella over the Middle East. And so all of the people in that region know that if they go beyond a certain point, a nuclear bomb can come down. The Egyptians could have the Aswan Dam bombed. You could have a small nuclear bomb, target a small country. So that's a big factor.
And this time, there is no support from Muslims or Arab countries for the Palestinians because of the situation in their countries that's fighting, or there is a lot of problems in their countries. Some of these Muslim countries, and some of the other countries is controlled by the United States, or by they have good relationship with the Israelis occupation. So it's really, we can say that the Palestinian fighting alone. There is no more Arab country that's care for the Palestinians. No more. So we believe in the people from the ground that's fighting with us, standing with us, and it's a grow in Europe, in the United States. We have in Arab country also a lot of people who support the Palestinians and the Palestinian story. But you know, it's not in our hands. That's to have the Arab countries with this situation there. Saudi Arabia, for example, they have a good relationship with the United States. They support them also. They give him money, petrol, everything. If you go to Egypt now, where is the Palestinian borders, if we want to talk just about the Palestinian border, we have enough problems in the Arab countries now to deal with.
Divide and conquer.
Yes, and they didn't care for the Palestinians. As if we mentioned the last massacre in Gaza, we didn't have to call it a war. In Gaza, it's not a war.
It's only one-sided, that's right.
Yeah, it's not a war. The last massacre in Gaza, when they killed 2,300 Palestinians in 1 month, we didn't saw mass demonstrations in Arab countries, especially in Egypt. We didn't saw a lot of demonstrations. It was a few people in the streets that was supporting Palestine.
That's where U.S. imperialism plays a strong fight in the Middle East and the Arab or Muslim countries. And I just want to reiterate what they said. The current Muslim countries and Arab countries are far by and large, minus Iran and Syria, are proxies of the United States, okay? And they are part of the problem.
Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. Saudi Arabia is gone. As far as you have to understand that the Palestinian people and the Arabs in large, they probably hate, and I'm going to say this up front, hate the government of Saudi Arabia more than anybody else, because we understand that they only pay lip service. Okay, they create sectarianism. They create this what we call fitna, which is basically a ruse of they put this enemy that's supposedly Shiite, okay, and they stick it in the middle. That's Saudi Arabia's role. The United Arab Emirates is the same thing. These people go out and bomb their own Muslim countries like Yemen, okay. Make no mistake that this is pushed by the United States. So what Saudi Arabia, what the United Arab Emirates, Jordan included, which is probably the second homeland, to my family, unfortunately, they're all against the plight of the Palestinian people. And that's a reality that's on the ground. That's something that a lot of people don't like to talk about out of fear, because we have Palestinians that live in Jordan. We have, obviously, in Syria, where Palestinians have been caught up again, in the conflict there. And they're constantly trying to be pushed on one side or the other. Are you pro or anti-regime? And no matter what side you take, you're damned. Okay? So the Muslim governments play a huge role in the oppression of the Palestinian people. So let's make that clear. That is something that is true, and that is something that the Zionists, proudly for them, that they want to say, oh, well, what about your government? And regardless of that, they use it to their benefit. But the truth of the matter is, yes, unfortunately, the Muslim governments play a huge role in the oppression of the Palestinian people. They're disregarded. They talk about, we want to pray in Jerusalem, and that's all they care about. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, the Palestinian people are suffering. And the only one that's really standing with the Palestinian resistance, as far as the Muslim countries, is Iran. Okay, let's be frank.
May I just speak to that? The United States gives $2 billion in weaponry to Egypt annually, $3 billion to Israel annually, and $1 billion to the military of Jordan annually.
Yes.
So that is all to keep Palestine under control.
Yes.
Because Egypt controls the border with Gaza. Jordan controls one of the borders with the West Bank. Israel controls the other border. We should not be giving any money to a country that uses weapons on its own people, such as, or on any civilian, such as in Egypt. Why are we giving $2 billion in weaponry to a country that is, won't even allow a protest in their own country? And they've used these weapons on civilians. I've been to Egypt. I've sat at the Rafah border, which Egypt borders with Gaza. I've seen Palestinians turned away from that border and sent back. They couldn't get into Gaza. People that were there to visit their grandma, people trying to get out to go to the hospital, students that just finished degrees in Cairo University couldn't get back home to Gaza. So Egypt controls that border and has hundreds of humanitarian violations. I mean, if you just look at the revolution, of course, now Israel uses the weaponry on civilians continually, and our tax dollars help support that occupation and the siege of Gaza, which is a humanitarian crisis, where Israel bombed water facilities, bombed police stations, civilians during the 2008-2009 massacre, and it's unfathomable how the U.S. could be supporting dictatorships and civilian casualties to this score. It's just unfathomable.
We called it Israeli blooded diamonds. That they bring the diamonds from Africa and they sell it in the United States, in Europe. 40% from this money it goes to the Israeli army. We talk about more than $1 billion a year. So it's not just the money that comes from the government. All the money that goes to, and we have many companies in the United States that support the occupation, especially the army.
I do have a question on that.
The Zionists always using a lot of violence against the Palestinians, killing people, because they want to push them always to use a violence in front of the media. In Bal'in, for example, we succeed in many ways. If you look to Palestinian West Bank now, we have about 15 to 20 places that's doing the same of Bal'in as a weekly demonstration. With international people and Israeli activists join this demonstration, like Na'alin, Nabi Saleh, Al-Walaja, Al-Ma'sara, all these villages that's join the weekly demonstration, and they're doing a weekly demonstration in their villages by the non-violent way. And it was a succeed to spread this. But also, when we talk about 40 Palestinians being killed in these non-violent demonstrations, it's also very hard to keep all the people, to push all the people to participate in like this method. So I think mostly we need more people from outside to put more pressure on the governments to stop this violence against the Palestinian people on the ground. Because he told me when he arrested me once from the home, He told me, if you didn't stop the demonstration, I will kill you. I will kill 30, 40 people from your village. I will follow your family. So this was by phones. When they arrested us, also they was saying this to scare us. Last week we had Black Lives Matter in the demonstration, and it's the same, it's the same resistance. And we are with all the people in the world who have a resistance to have the justice. And we didn't have any problem to work with them to be in the same way, because there is no justice in Palestine, no justice here in the United States. So we can work together, and they are fighting for their right to live like a human being. They want there is justice, so we are with them. We learn a lot from other cases of non-violent resistance, like in India, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, all these cases that comes in our minds that teach us a lot of non-violent resistance. Also, as Palestinian people, we are not a violent people.
Supporting Palestinian rights does support black rights here in America. It's all connected. Okay, it's all interconnected, as my colleague here was explaining before, Ahlam, in reference to the police state here, where black people are affected and are being killed, are the same methods that are being used by Israeli police, by the Israeli occupation against the Palestinians. So when America here sends police forces, when they send their leaders, when they send their chiefs of police to train by the Israeli government, okay, they use brutal tactics, right, and they bring them back here to America, and by and large kill blacks, Latinos, and all oppressed people. It is connected. So when we're fighting that, we're fighting against that. We're fighting against police oppression against black people, police oppression against Palestinians. It's all interconnected. When Ferguson happened, the people in Palestine, in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, were actually tweeting people in Ferguson on how to resist the police violence there, on how to resist in the demonstrations. They're actually telling them what to do if you get sprayed by mace. I guess using all forms of stuff that they use in Palestine to help relieve the pain by being sprayed by OC and so on and so forth, and how to resist nonviolently. Okay, so these were tactics that were brought on by the Palestinians directly by social media, and this is the phenomenon of social media and how quickly people are connected. So yes, it is connected. If we fight for Palestinian rights, we're actually fighting for rights here, because AIPAC is a lobby that is basically supporting the oppression, the illegal occupation of Palestine. So we need to fight them, because instead of our money going outside, and we don't want our money to go anywhere. We don't want it to go to the Palestinian Authority. We don't want our money to go to the Egyptians that are also part of the siege on Gaza. Let's make it clear. The Egyptians are also responsible for the siege on Gaza, not just Israel. It is an Egyptian-Israeli siege on Gaza. Okay, and that needs to always be said and need to be corrected. So yes, so this all stops that. By fighting for Palestinian rights, by fighting to end the illegal occupation of Palestine, we are also fighting for America, because AIPAC is hijacking American foreign policy, and we need to stop that. And once we stop that, you will have the cities in Flint not have their water poisoned. You will have the streets in Cleveland, the police officers even who are being laid off, the safety officers in Cleveland, okay, won't be laid off, all right? And a lot of things in America would go straight if we only ended the occupation in Palestine. So yes, it is all connected. It is all fighting, not just the occupation in Palestine, but fighting against U.S. imperialism all over the world. And we are responsible for it here. We are Americans. This is our tax dollars. So I'm speaking as a person of Palestinian descent, who's here by force, by the way. I wasn't, I didn't ask to be in America. So for those Islamophobes that want me to go back to Palestine, I welcome you to join our movement, to call for the return of the Palestinian refugees, to get the hell out of America and go back to Palestine. Yeah.
Go home.
Stand with me, and I want that fight.
Being held accountable at Kent State until we get on top of our own past injustice that are still wounds wide open people don't even see anymore. It's all connected, yes, but as Americans we can't get American people to pay attention to the injustice in our own front yard, backyard, up the street. How do we get to the heart of it all and just that's been my ongoing question. I can stand in solidarity with people. I can't get out of the country right now, but I've wanted to go many times. I was going to go with Mazen. I was going to, and that never happened, unfortunately, or I would be there. But I don't understand until we get to the heart of the injustice and the hypocrisy of this country that we were built on. We killed all of my people, and we built on the backs of this gentleman's people, and we allow a small group of people to in the last 20 years completely hijack our country. Our laws don't work. They steal elections. The will of the people isn't in place. I mean, obviously this election proves that. How do we resolve ourselves to be human and get out of our box of the past that confines all of us with hatred? And I would love New York State back for my people. Truly, I would. But I don't see that happening. And I would love to be able to give Palestine back to those people who still have their keys in their pockets because they haunt me. Okay? I just, as an activist, I will stand on a line, I will put my body down, but I don't even, there's no justice in the courts. It's a very large thing we all have to resolve internally as humans to get rid of this hatred that is keeping us all blind to each other's very real predicaments. I mean, your people live in an open-air prison camp. There is no doubt. My people here in Cleveland are gunned down in the street with no resolution, and we have police that think it's okay, that we have no problem when someone 137 shots into a car or a child in 1.6 seconds is dropped without a weapon in his hand. And the people of this area are okay with that. It goes beyond borders, ethnicities. It's a power grab that has been going on for decades, if not millennia, of all of human history. There's always got to be an other to keep the ruling class in place. How do we stop that?
Correlate Palestinians to Islam, and they don't realize that's the birthplace of Jesus.
Right.
So I think once you have people don't know what Palestine is. And when people ask me where am I from, and I say Palestine, oh, Pakistan? No, it's not Pakistan. It's Palestine, and they don't know where it's at. So I think it's just having more people out there, educating people. It's because you have to understand they're only being taught what the media is letting them know. So whether it's the news stations, movies, entertainment, and even in school. I mean, all they learn about is what happened in Nazi Germany, the Holocaust, and then how the Jews fled and went to Israel. Mm-hmm. They never learned that there were people living there first, right. And that same thing as the misinformation with American Indians. It's the same thing. So I think once people go out more and do more activism and educate people more about what's going on, then it's more about the humanistic side. I think the lack of humanism and empathy is the issue, regardless of whether it's Palestine, Burma, what's going on in Somalia or Sudan, or even in the United States. I mean, we have ghettos even in the east side, in East Cleveland, where people are being killed all the time. And the thing is, nobody cares because they don't feel it relates to them. And I think having them understand how it relates to them, teaching them how everything is interrelated, will better help them. Once they learn it's about more than just Muslims, it's not a Muslim thing, or it's not just a Palestinian thing, and they realize that we need to tell them what they're doing to children, how they're arresting children, how they're killing women during labor, trying to get to the hospital. People will start acting on it. People will start making more. I mean, when I explain this to people, then they start saying, okay, well, I'm not going to get from Starbucks, or I'm not going to get from Menchie's. Did you know Menchie's was owned by an Israeli soldier? probably not most people did know that. I mean, Menchie's is owned and started by an Israeli soldier who referred to Palestinians as terrorists. So we don't eat from Menchie's. So I think that's where it starts, and that's where people need to begin, is teaching humanism and empathy at a young age, and then explaining what exactly is going on and how it's affecting people.
Against their own governments, as are some of the people. The government is suppressing its own people. In Egypt, they killed the democracy movement in those countries. So it's the government against the people rather than the country. There's a division in these countries, and that's exactly what's going on in Palestine. The Palestinian people do not love the Palestinian Authority, which is really collaborating with the United States and with Israel to maintain order for the advantage of the people in Ramallah, who have advantages of living in that place, to the disadvantage of all the majority of the people. And we know that formula here.
Very conservative communities, white, black, the white liberals scared all the black folks out because it was just some things people say.
I can tell you what.
It just some white people, they mean well, but I'll tell you, their language is really patronizing and just not working for people.
Tell us what you're going to say.
But for a year we sat every week with a mediator doing our due diligence on this one, and as soon as we were supposed to do it, nobody would.
Nonviolent resistance is the way that show the face of the violent. So there is no freedom, no justice. So you have to fight, and the resistance is the first step to freedom. We didn't have any choice just to be in resistance. Of course, I have hope to end the occupation next week, because this we're doing our demonstrations every week. We didn't go to demonstration because we like it. We're going to end the occupation, and we have hope to end the occupation next week. I cannot put myself in hope to end the occupation after 5 years, because I cannot put myself more 5 years under the occupation in my future time. So this gives me hope to continue in the occupation next week.